Welcome to this edition of the Reidsville Chamber of Commerce News and Views. I'm your host, Diane Sawyer, President and CEO of the Reidsville Chamber. Today we have a special guest with us, retired Lieutenant Shannon Coates and current owner of Coates Collectibles and Antiques. Welcome to the show,
Thank
Shannon.
you. Glad to be here.
I am glad to have you here. I think you are one of the probably longest staples for me in my 12 years at the Chamber of somebody we've worked with off and on and somebody who's been around in some former capacity. We've always had a great relationship with the PD, and especially when it came to events and folks working downtown or if things were happening and we need to work with the police. But it's even more fun when you turn Chamber member and now we have that relationship. So tell us a little bit about just your career and how you landed in Reidsville, because just before the show started, we were talking about how you were from Tampa. So,
well, I was born in Tampa, Florida, and my father was in the Air Force, so he was stationed there. And then we moved back up here. I was young, so I've lived here really most of my life. Went to Reidsville High School, graduated there. And at that point, when I was in high school, was when I decided I just wanted to take the career in law enforcement. Knew a lot of law enforcement officers that worked at Reidsville. One of my best friends' father was a captain up here, so grew up around that really most of my life and young life in school, and then made that decision to go to police rookie school, they called it then. I think it's now BLET. And so I went to that, got my associate's degree first at RCC. We kind of had to go back and forth from there to GTCC to get it. Got that first and then went into the rookie school and started my career here in June of '94. But prior to that, I worked for the city before when I was going to school and college out at the city lake through the Recs department. So I was cutting grass out there, doing some maintenance stuff and things around the lake. So I really enjoyed that because I like outdoors, working outdoors. So it kind of started then. And carried on until I just recently retired in February of this year.
it seems really common for folks to say, well, I started with the city doing this. I know that lots of our council members have been paid city employees. They've been Recs department directors and police chiefs and all kinds of stuff, and then they end up coming back in a capacity to serve because they just can't seem to get enough of wanting to give and be a part of the community. And I just think that's a common thing for those of us that have a heart to serve and have a heart to be engaged and be involved to continue to do that.
Everybody told me when I started, it may be tough working in your own city that you grew up in, and especially in law enforcement, because who you may have to deal with, who you may have to charge or arrest and all that. And so that was challenging at some times because you've had to arrest people you grew up with in school and played sports with and things like that. But luckily, I never had really any issues with anybody I had to deal with like that. I've had to arrest a few people I did grow up and play sports with. But, I think I treated everybody fair, the same, with respect. And so, that's just my personality. I want to treat everybody fair and the same. And I think I did that. So it worked out for me.
So you had a long, successful career. How many years with the city?
It would be 30 total.
30
through
total.
The retirement system, yep.
That's amazing. Well, I know that we are here really to talk about this cool new venture of yours, which I have dubbed your retirement plan.
Yeah.
So tell us how that came about and who all's involved and what that looks like.
That started about 3 years ago, really, because we opened up our store in October of 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic.
Right in the middle of the pandemic.
And it was a situation that just kind of laid down at my feet and said, here you go, what you going to do with it. But how that all started, and I've always been into antiques and old stuff, and that was because my parents were. So I grew up around that, and I've always liked that.
Well, tell us about that. How does that correlate? Like going to sales or treasure hunting?
Yeah,
or what does that look like?
Going to auctions, estate sales, just yard sales, and just whatever. Growing up
And what
with
kinds of
them.
things do you like?
Anything old, it doesn't matter. I kind of like the history of it. you know, of how old things are, and you know, we come across Reidsville history and a lot of stuff people didn't know. We're finding that stuff out. But it didn't, to me, it could be anything. It could be old primitive stuff, you know, talking about back in the 1800s, furniture, tables, pottery, that type of thing. Old toys from back in the 20s, 30s, you know, 40s, the old metal toys. They've always attracted me. And so just growing up with my parents and going through the sales and auctions and things like that, I guess it just got into my blood. And so I kind of told myself, you know, when I retired, that I may like to have an antique store, open up an antique store. And so, unfortunately, we was in the area of town where we had a lot of break-ins. And so we was over there working that area and knocking on doors and doing our investigations and stuff. And come across a house that had been broken into. Mm-hmm. And one of the detectives that was with me, because, you know, at the time I retired, I was a lieutenant over investigation, so I was running the detective division. And so one of my investigators was with me, and he said, well, you know, I grew up over here around that house, and it's been empty for 20 plus years, and it's just full of stuff. So we walked around the house, and lo and behold, somebody did break into it. And so I went in, crawled in through the window, because a lot of times you run into these houses, people go in there and they'll sleep and they'll stay until they get caught. And that was a situation, because you could tell somebody had gone in there and had been sleeping. So I reached out to the person that was in charge, would happen to be the grandparents, or grandson of the grandparents that lived there, and spoke to him on the phone. Lived in Winston, and we met, and I told him my intentions. I was coming up on retirement, and what my intentions were, and what he had planned for all these, you know, belongings. The house was full, and it was a building out back that his grandfather did woodworking. Wow. And so we talked and worked out a deal, and I bought the estate out. And then at the same time, I was looking for a building downtown. And that was getting a little challenging, trying to find a building downtown, and of one that kind of fit my need and where it was at and all that stuff. So I didn't jump into anything. I kind of looked and walked around. And during the pandemic, where the building I'm at now used to be the old Swans Paint, and UMAR was in there. And I think they had two buildings, and that came available, and they moved them and consolidated into one building. And so that building came available, and I reached out to the owner of it, which I knew her, and she's a big antique person herself. So I told her my intentions, and it was just like made to happen. And so we started moving things in the summer of 21, and we opened up in October of 21. So we've been going pretty strong since then. I mean, the pandemic really didn't. We took our precautions and stuff, but really didn't hamper anything. People kept coming in.
Which is amazing, because you would think there's a lot of older people who would be a lot of your customers, but obviously there's a lot of younger people too who are very interested in specific things. Or
you never know when somebody walks through that door what they're looking for or what they collect. And that's the interesting part. And I would say the customers that come in, I mean, it's a lot of talking. You talk to them, you learn things, and I love that. I just love, you know, talking to everybody, and everything that comes in, and everybody's comfortable. They're looking. I don't know. It must be something about the antique world, but we have a great time with the customers coming in and looking for things. And if they can't find it there, you know, I'll write the information down, and then I try to find it for them. So we've been successful on that end, looking for stuff and locating it for people. So I enjoy that, you know, too.
So there has to be some sort of correlation, I would think, like for your personality or for your brain to, like, because it almost fits together, like the way you were talking about people and being comfortable with their personalities and what they're looking for. Like, to me, like, it's investigative work. You were just saying, like, so to me, like, it's like a positive spin on, not that their work, because I'm sure in your career there are lots of positive outcomes and things that you were able to help people with and that sort of thing, but it's kind of like continuing helping people. Yeah.
And I'm just used to it.
Yeah.
So, and I think the investigative part that comes in is when somebody's trying to find something. And then I say, well, I'll do some checking for you. And so I'm on the phone, or I'm talking to people that I know. You know, some people will call them pickers. You know, we have a lot of pickers that come in. And then if they don't have it, then they have a slew of people that they can call and locate it. So somewhere down the line, I'm pretty lucky at finding some of this stuff that people are looking for, because some of it is kind of hard to find. If somebody's got a certain collection and they need that one thing or to seal the deal for their collection, so it's kind of tough. And there's a lot of collectors that come in, and when they tell you they have 4,000 pieces of this and 5,000 pieces of this, and start showing you pictures of it, and their basement looks like a museum, that's some serious collectors there. And so we get a lot of that comes in.
So when you say collectors, surely that's not all people from here. Like, where do you see people? Like, how far are people coming?
I had this conversation yesterday with a customer, and I'm going to say, and I looked it up on our system, I would say probably 65% to maybe 70% are out-of-town folks are our customers. And we've had them as far as Canada that comes in. They come in and visit, or they're traveling through. Just all over the country. We've had them come through. And some of our pieces here, they've taken back. So it's kind of neat to know, somebody from North Dakota or Chicago and all that stuff has bought a piece of furniture, whatever it was, and loaded up, and that's where it's going back to. And we've had a lot of folks that have been staying at
Shay Lindsay?
Yes, Ches is what I would say. They have come in our store and walking around downtown and checked our store out, and come back and bought a piece and took it back with them. And they were coming here. Some will come here for the entertainment here, the music, and then some were going to Tanger shows at the Tanger, and that was this situation. So that's pretty, that's pretty interesting.
Speaking of people coming to the shows, you have a cool little story about that.
Yeah, we had Pam Tillis came in, and I wasn't there. My parents were there at the time, and she came in, and this was the ironic story. She walked in, and this is what my parents were saying, and she had her phone up, and she was videoing. I think she was Facebooking live that she's antiquing in Reidsville. And so my mom and dad were back there, and we had just gotten in a bunch of vinyl, records. And we have a console stereo, and we've sold, those are another thing that's coming back too, is the old console stereos. And I've sold about every one I've had. Now, the one we have down there now is the NFS, because Mom won't let me sell it because she likes to listen to the records. So that day they were going through and cleaning them, and we was playing them to make sure there's any skips, and if it is, we document that. And there's a stand right there on the console, and just so happens my mom had gotten a record out of Mel Tillis, which was Pam's dad.
Yep, Pam's dad.
And had set it up there. And she comes in and makes a beeline and sees it and goes straight back, and then that's when my mom and dad realized it was Pam Tillis. So they had a conversation, and she says, I seen it, and she's like, oh, that's my dad and all. And she's got a bunch of his records but never had that one. She'd never seen that record. And so my dad put it on, played it for her. She was videoing things and stuff like that. And so she had a good conversation with him, took a picture and signed a little autograph for him and all that, bought a couple things in there. So she was real down to earth. Just the other week, Jimmy Fortune was playing. So his wife and violinist came in. And so they bought some things. They're into vintage clothes. And so we come across a lot of those from the 30s, 40s, 50s. And so we had some of those, and so that's what they were interested in. And then she bought a record as well. So that was kind of neat, talking to her and all that, and listening to her stories. But they're just down to earth. Everybody that comes in there is just down to earth, and you would have no idea, they're a huge collector or the wife of a star, country music star.
And to me, that's one of those just starstruck moments, because that 90s country is what I grew up on. So, Shake the Sugar Tree and all the Pam stuff, that was. So I remember when she was coming, and I had a conflict and could not go to that concert, and I was so upset. The only one I've made was Colin Ray, and but to me, those are the two biggest ones, and then Dina Carter's coming, which I think is amazing. It's so cool that we have that right here in Reidsville. And
a lot of good turnouts, too.
It is, and those two things tie together.
Yeah.
Like, we're on the just bubbling on the surface of breaking through of things really popping in downtown. And your corner store is one of the coolest things that ties to this. Then there's the brewery, and now we've got this tap house coming, which is going to be your neighbor across the street,
across the
which is
street.
going to bring so much traffic.
And dirty laundry, something, whatever.
Oh yeah,
don't call it.
yeah.
So that's kind of neat.
It is very neat.
So that's gonna be cool, and and the much needed facelift down here.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That we got. So, once everybody gets used to the pattern. You hear a lot of chatter about that. So
sure.
once everybody gets used to the patterns and stuff like that, I mean, it'll smooth over like everything else does.
Well, I tell people, it was meant to slow things down. It was meant to make it walkable. It was meant to bring people downtown and to avoid just barreling through downtown if you didn't really need to be downtown. Right. And we heard it in our event that we had, the first in the series, about. So we've got this great series we're doing with the city on learn how to place your bet on Reidsville, kind of cashing in on the casino. But the idea really is to bring our business owners and our property owners and our investors and people's ideas for businesses and franchises and all these things together. And we have a partnership with the city of Danville, and we had Lee Vogler on their city council, who is the youngest city council member they've ever had. He came on at 24 years old, and he's in his third term, and he was talking about the private and the public relationships, and they invested, I think he said $50 million now is where they are in downtown Danville, because people were coming in and leaving because these industries were like, you don't care about your city, your main street's terrible. It really does matter. And now I think he said it was up to like 350 million that the private folks and businesses had put in to the town and into making Danville thriving. And so it's all about understanding the vision and understanding like what's happening. And so what this city council has done by agreeing to put that money, it's going to be amazing. I mean, and here we are, Tap House. Here they come. They're going to invest and put money and do a facelift and make it work. So I'm so excited to see where Reidsville will be in another 5 years. I've seen so much in 12. I can only imagine when it's been another few years what we're going to look like.
Oh yeah, and the buildings around here, if there's still a lot of empty buildings.
There are.
And if we can get the folks that own those motivated into renting them out or selling them, because I have a lot of people come in my store, and fortunately I'm on the corner, so sometimes for people it's the first stop. They'll park in our parking lot, which is a really good bonus to have.
It is a bonus.
And they'll park there, and then they'll ask what else is uptown, and I tell them, well, just go straight up this side. This is what you have, then you come down. So and then we have a lot of them is ask, is there any buildings available and things like that. So I'll refer them to who they need to be speaking with, and there's quite a few. And if we could just get those folks motivated into say, hey, you don't have to sell it, rent it.
Right.
You got some folks wanting to put a business in. So, you have that challenge too, because you don't want a building to sit. And that's the thing I don't like to see, is I hate to see a good old building sit and then it's not taken care of, and then all of a sudden it starts to fall apart. So,
especially downtown when they're connected like they are.
Yeah.
And, I've learned so much. This was not my background's in public health education. So obviously when the pandemic hit, that was a very interesting role for me to be the business leader and also have that background, because I wanted people to be safe and take precautions for their customers and what their customers wanted. But coming into this, like I had the nonprofit background, but I did not realize so many things about police and fire and zoning and codes, and there was so much to learn. And one of the first things that really fascinated me was the Central Business District, and how even though like this building and the chamber owns it, we're connected to Dave's building next door, or to, and if one goes up, the rest are gone if the fire department's not here. And so it's kind of crazy to understand how all of that works. And, we've had a couple that through the years the city has torn the building down and made, an alley or a green space or, whatever. And so
and it's due to because they wasn't taken care of.
Yeah, because of the deterioration.
Roof fall in or something that sort.
Or like saving the building across the street from us that was former Senator Sandy Sands building. You know, the mural is on that, and it's adjacent to Mural Park. And then now you've got the showcase, and so they were able to package that deal for them. And it's exciting to think about what Leslie and Dewey will be able to do with that.
I think he's getting ready to get started on.
He is.
On
They're
first
working
phase
on,
of it.
Yeah.
But that's another thing, and plus me being into the antiques and the historical buildings, the older and all, and preserving them. I'm big on that, and a big push for that, trying to keep those. And
Well, Lucky City's a great example.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how great that looks and the purpose it's serving. The old food deals.
there's still a lot of potential with some of these buildings, and getting them all full, that'd be great.
It would be.
And there's a couple of things that I'm working on and going to do some talks to see what we could do about downtown. I know we have the Fridays and things like that, and I've had a lot of people come in, what about this? And they ask about the car show, and they ask about this. And there's a couple other things that I'm looking at that maybe I can see if everybody else would jump on a bandwagon. Just have some type of attraction to get folks
feet on the
up
street.
here. Yeah, to
absolutely.
get folks up here and have a fun time. So I'm looking forward to that.
I think that would be awesome. And you said something else that it just sparked for me too. You were talking about history, and you were talking about the city, and all this goes together. We're celebrating the sesquicentennial, the 150th anniversary of the city. Has that brought anything through? Has that brought, because I know at one point city staff, they were looking for things and looking for history, and then I'm sure it sparked interest of other people. Has that been anything?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of?
Yeah, I found several things that the city has bought and several things that I've just given the city and donated it so they can put on display for the anniversary. And still looking for things, And we've found things that, it could be some kind of newspaper article that we may come across that's back in 1905 or something that talks about this and that, or pictures of downtown how it used to be. We'll run across things like that, and then I'll pass it, I'll give it to the city. I've donated a few things to the museum out in Rockingham at the old courthouse. Miss Holt has come in several times, and I've donated some things to them. And example would be Reidsville High School annuals that we came across that was 1905, 1906.
Wow.
So I thought that was appropriate to. And I asked her, did she have anything like that out there? And she said no. I said, well, here you go. And then a couple other things. So I donated that to them. And so stuff like that, because you just never know what you find. And I'll give you a quick example. We had a gentleman come in the store, and we've known the family for a while, and said, look, my grandparents' building's in bad shape, falling in. I've got to do something about it. The city's going to tear it down. It's just caving in. Would you be interested in coming and taking a look and seeing? And I said, sure. I said, when's the last time somebody's been in the house? He said, 1960. I said, nobody's been in the house from 1960 and back? No. And so when I walked in there, now the floors were falling in, but the house was completely full. Everything in that house was from 1960 and older. So after about 5 trips with 3 trucks and a trailer, I'm just pulling stuff out. Don't have time to look at it because it was up against a deadline for when the city wanted to start to condemn it. And so I was just grabbing stuff, And we were finding things, from old Pat Brady Oil Company, a lot of businesses downtown here, memorabilia stuff that they would sell or give to customers, old calendars from the 20s and 30s that had never been used were rolled up. And we have somebody that comes in and we'll find one and give it to him. And then he'll go and shrink wrap it for us on some poster board so we can preserve that. But we've got them from, leaks full over in Eden and things like that. All around the area, this is what we're finding. And that stuff goes, pretty good. Somebody will say, well, my granddaddy used to run that, or he used to work there, and they want that.
I'll tell you too, Leaksville Cab Stand and Leaksville Rest Home were my great uncle and my great aunt. So
I'll probably find something there.
You probably will. And he used to eat at Seal Test every morning, and then he'd go to the cab stand in downtown Leaksville.
Yeah. So that's, you just never know. I still got stuff in a warehouse that a friend of mine's let me store there. And just getting the time to go through it. Our storage room in the back there is just slam full. And see, we do 2 parking lot sales every year, one in the spring, one in the fall. And I try to fill the parking lot up to get rid of stuff that I'm tripping over or I'm not going to put out, in the showroom area. But so we do that, and that's fun. Get a lot of turnout for that. And that's the time to wheel and deal. If you want to find a deal, that's the day to come, because I got to move this stuff because I got to get the other stuff in.
When do you usually do the fall one?
Fall one, I think last time we did it in October.
I was going to say, that'd be a great time to do it the same day as the Fab Festival.
Yeah, I probably will. I want to say it was October we did it last time, and we're going to do it this time. It's Memorial Day weekend.
Getting back to the antique roots of the Antique Alley.
Yeah, and I remember those days, and the downtown was just packed. You would have, if it was a beautiful day, you was parking all the way up at the YMCA walking, and I remember that, and because I had to work on some of them, work a lot of them too. So that was a big turnout. If the weather works out, you can have a really big turnout depending on what kind of vendors you got. So
wrapping all this up, because we're almost out of time, are you going to contribute anything to the time capsule that the city's doing at the end of the year?
Whatever they want.
That's something to think about. I was going to say that's something to think about, because that's a really cool. It's just neat how they've been doing the open houses too. I know they had the PDs. They just had that one, and the Governor Reed, and you see people asking about. So we get a lot of questions about where antiques, and people will call the chamber. Where do folks have them downtown? But the recent one have been the Christmas ornaments. And the village. That's become a thing again. So
and those villages are hard to find.
They are,
because it was 6 of them, and so those are tough. And I still got a few down there, but the ones that are hard to find now are the factory one. Then you had the monument, and then you have Chinkapin, and so those are the tough ones. Most all of them, I think, were lighted, except the monument was just a pedestal type thing. And so those are the ones that sought after. Those are the ones that are hard to find. They are tough, They are. So I try to look for those as well, but they're
getting
tough.
harder and harder.
Yeah, they're pretty rare. So, but yeah, we have a good time, and I enjoy it. Enjoy the customers coming in, and if I don't have it, I send them on up somewhere else. I send them on up the street, and I think that's what it's about.
It is. That's the neighborly thing to do, and the business to business. So.
Yep.
Well, we're excited to have you. I think it adds a very unique touch to downtown, and I honestly feel like every main street should have that sort of shop. I think it just contributes to, and obviously, and since we're out of time, we won't go down those roads, but Reidsville has some notorious things that we are known for too, and lots of PD through the years, and SBI, and people have been involved in different things throughout the years. So I'm sure you run across those kinds of things too, and things that probably interest you, and some that you probably don't really want to rehash or revisit. But I can see how the two tie together. So
yeah, if you walk in our store, you're walking into a room of history, because it's just, I try to strictly stay as old as I can get. Nothing new or anything like that. Yeah, it's collectible, but I try strictly antiques. That's what I shoot for. So
yeah. Was there anything else you want to share?
No, I'll just share. Anybody that's interested in coming looking for antiques, just come on down to 239 South Scale Street at Coates Collectibles and Antiques, and you should be able to find a treasure, I would think.
Well, I hope that they do visit you, and I'm glad that you put that address out there, because I was going to ask you for it anyway.
Beat you to the punch.
Yes, you did. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that is it for this edition of the Reidsville Chamber of Commerce News and Views. As always, you can find us at 140 South Scale Street, right in the heart of downtown Reidsville, and on our social media, and at reidsvillechamber.org. And that's it for today's show. We'll see you real soon.